"Granny, my parents will take your money after the party today," whispered my 9-year-old grandson, and his words felt like lightning striking my heart. I, a loving grandmother who had always helped them, left early, hiding my shock behind a smile. But what I did next, a clever plan to stop their betrayal, surprised everyone. I won their own game and they will never forget it. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Erlene Williams, from New York City, USA. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. The phone rang at breakfast time, making me jump. "Mom, I hope you're not busy." Sarah's voice sounded strange through the phone, like she was reading from a script. It was 8 a.m., and Sarah never called this early unless something was wrong. "What's the matter, dear?" I asked, setting down my teacup. The morning sun was shining through my kitchen window, making pretty patterns on my old wooden table. "Well, David really wants. We both think you should definitely come to Tommy's birthday party today." The words came out too fast, like she had practiced them. Something cold touched my heart. When had they ever needed to be Jimmy to see my grandson? "Sarah, when have I ever missed Tommy's birthday?" I asked softly. No, that's not what I meant," she said quickly. I heard David's voice in the background, sounding worried and upset. "It's just that David has been planning this for weeks, and he asked me to call and make sure you're coming." I stirred my tea slowly, watching the steam rise up. David asking. The same David who usually seemed uncomfortable when I visited. "That's very sweet of him," I said carefully. "Yeah, he's really excited about it." Sarah's laugh sounded fake, like a toy that was broken. "The party starts at 3, but maybe you could come a little early. We wanted to talk about some important family things." The spoon made a small clink against my cup. Family things. In the 2 years since my husband died, we had never needed special talks about family. "What kind of family things?" "Yes. Oh, just planning ahead. David has some ideas about how we can all help each other more." I walked to my window, still holding the phone. Mrs. Peterson next door was feeding her cats on the porch. David with ideas about helping. The same David who always seemed to forget my birthday. "That sounds nice, dear," I said, keeping my voice calm. But my grandmother's feelings were telling me something was wrong. 50 years of watching people had taught me when someone was trying to trick me. "Great. So you'll be there early, maybe around 2:30. I looked at Tommy's latest drawing on my refrigerator, a picture of us fishing together. The drawing showed 2 happy stick people by a blue pond. "Grandma and me, best friends forever," written in red crayon at the bottom. That little boy was the sunshine in my world since my husband passed away. "Of course I'll be there early," I said firmly. "I wouldn't miss Tommy's special day for anything." "Perfect. And Mom," Sarah's voice got quieter, "just keep an open mind about what we want to discuss, okay? It's all about making sure everyone is safe and happy." The phone went quiet before I could ask what she meant. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then put it down next to my morning newspaper. Something felt wrong. Sarah's voice had that same guilty sound I remembered from when she was little and had taken cookies without asking. But this felt bigger than childhood secrets. I poured fresh tea and tried not to worry. Maybe David really wanted to be a better son-in-law. Maybe I was thinking too much about a simple invitation. But I couldn't stop thinking about those words. Making sure everyone is safe and happy. In my experience, when people started talking about keeping everyone safe, they usually meant keeping themselves safe first. I looked at Tommy's drawing again and smiled despite my worries. Whatever Sarah and David wanted to talk about could wait until after I celebrated my grandson's 9th birthday. Some things were more important than grown-up problems. Still, I decided to listen very carefully to whatever they wanted to discuss. 20 minutes later, I stood in my bedroom, looking at dresses my husband would never see me wear again. The blue dress reminded me of his funeral, how David had whispered about all this empty space while we buried my husband. Even then, something in his voice had felt calculating. I pulled the dress from the closet and saw myself in the mirror. $85,000. That's what I'd given them over the past 2 years. House repairs, car payments, Tommy's dance classes. My husband would have said it was too much, but he would have understood that Tommy deserved better than his parents could give him alone. My purse felt heavy as I got dressed. 2 credit cards I'd used for David's emergencies. The broken water heater that became a whole new kitchen, Sarah's temporary need for grocery money that became something I paid every month. Each request came with David's embarrassed explanations and Sarah's perfectly timed, "Thank you so much, Mom." Walking to the kitchen for my car keys, I passed Tommy's latest artwork on the refrigerator. He'd drawn our last visit to the zoo. 2 stick figures looking at elephants, both smiling. "Best grandma ever," written in green marker across the top. That's when David's recent words hit me like a thunderbolt. 3 weeks ago, standing right here in my kitchen, he looked around and said, "Eleanor, don't you think this house is getting too big for you? There are nice retirement homes where you wouldn't have to worry about cooking and cleaning." Sarah had quickly changed the subject to Tommy's school play, but David's eyes had stayed on my nice furniture, the expensive things my husband and I had bought together. The same calculating look he'd worn at the funeral. I picked up my car keys, remembering my husband's last clear words to me. "Promise me you'll always take care of Tommy, but watch David carefully. He's weak, and weak people make bad choices when someone pushy is telling them what to do." At the time, I thought he meant David's gambling friends or his get-rich-quick ideas. Now I wondered if my husband had seen something in David that I'd missed. The way he started every money conversation with Tommy's needs, making me feel selfish for asking questions. The garage door opened as morning light shined on my old Honda. My husband's truck still sat covered in the other spot. I'd kept paying insurance on it for months after he died, unable to accept he was really gone. Maybe that's what they were counting on, my inability to say no when it came to family. The grandmother who would rather pay than argue, who would rather trust than ask hard questions. But 30 years of running my own flower shop had taught me to check the books before making any big decisions. I backed out of the driveway slowly, watching my house get smaller in the mirror. By tonight, after whatever conversation Sarah and David had planned, I suspected everything would look different. For now, I needed to buy my grandson a birthday present. Something special, maybe the last gift I'd give him before everything changed. The toy store was busy with Saturday morning families as I parked near the front door. 9:15 and already parents were looking at birthday presents. Perfect timing for Tommy's gifts. The robot building section caught my attention right away. Tommy had been fascinated by robots since his school science fair last month. The Super Robot Builder set looked perfect, challenging enough for his smart mind, but not too hard. $120 seemed fair for something that would keep him happy for weeks. "Great choice, ma'am," the young worker smiled as she rang up my purchase. "My nephew loves this series. Would you like it wrapped? Please. It's for my grandson's 9th birthday." Next stop was the bike section. Tommy had mentioned wanting a real bicycle, not the small one he'd grown out of. The red mountain bike by the window looked perfect. Light enough for him to handle, good brakes he could reach, safety reflectors for riding after dark. $240, but his happy face would be worth every penny. Loading the bike box into my car, I checked my watch. 9:45. Time for one more stop. Eleanor. What a nice surprise. Dorothy Miller appeared next to my car, holding a shopping bag from the bookstore. My neighbor of 12 years looked truly happy to see me. Her gray hair neatly styled despite the early hour. "Dorothy, good morning. Starting your weekend shopping early, I see." "Oh, you know me. I like avoiding the crowds," she laughed, pointing toward the store entrance. "I suppose you're here buying birthday presents. David mentioned Tommy's party when I saw him last week." "He mentioned it." I closed my car's back door, curious. "Where did you see him?" "Downtown, actually. Thursday morning, I think." Sarah was with him, and they were coming out of First National Bank with a big stack of papers. Dorothy chuckled. "Looked very serious and official." Probably getting a loan or something like young couples do these days. Thursday. 3 days ago. David hadn't said anything about bank business during his strange phone call this morning. But then again, why would he? People handled money matters all the time without telling everyone. Probably just normal business, I said, moving my shopping bags to my other arm. Of course, dear. None of my business anyway. Dorothy patted my shoulder kindly. Well, I should let you finish shopping. Give my love to that wonderful grandson of yours. She walked away toward the bookstore, leaving me standing by my car with a strange feeling of worry. Bank business on Thursday, nervous phone call on Saturday. The timing felt oddly suspicious, but then again, David always seemed to be dealing with some money problem or another. I shook off the feeling and walked toward the flower shop near the mall's side entrance. Sarah had always liked flowers, and pink roses would make a thoughtful gift for the hostess of Tommy's party. The flower lady, a middle-aged woman with soil on her hands, wrapped 12 beautiful roses in shiny paper. These are lovely, she said, adjusting the bow. Special occasion. My grandson's birthday party. They're for his mother. How sweet of you. She'll love them. $25 for flowers that would die in a week. But Sarah's smile would make it worthwhile. These small kindnesses mattered in keeping families close, especially when there might be hidden tensions. By 10:30, my car was full of packages that cost nearly $500 of birthday joy. The robot kit, bicycle, roses, and the card I'd chosen, each item picked with Tommy's happiness in mind. This is what grandmothers did. They spoiled their grandchildren completely and loved every moment of it. Driving home through Saturday morning traffic, I kept thinking about Dorothy's casual comment. David and Sarah at the bank with papers, serious faces, official business that David hadn't bothered mentioning. But married couples handled lots of paperwork without involving their families. Insurance forms, house refinancing, college savings for Tommy. Any number of normal reasons could explain their downtown visit. Still, as I pulled into my driveway, I couldn't quite ignore the small voice in my head wondering why David had sounded so nervous this morning. After wrapping Tommy's gifts and eating a quick lunch, I arrived at Sarah's house exactly at 3 o'clock. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom! Sarah practically sang my name, her arms spreading wide like we hadn't seen each other in years instead of weeks. You look absolutely beautiful today. This excitement felt strange. Sarah usually gave me a quick hug and rushed back to party preparations. Today she touched my arm 3 times while talking, her eyes bright with energy I'd never seen directed at me before. Thank you, dear. The party looks wonderful. I stepped inside, carrying the wrapped bicycle box and gift bag with the robot kit. Colorful streamers hung everywhere, and balloon bunches filled every corner, much more fancy than previous birthday parties. Mom, there she is. David appeared from the living room, his voice echoing through the house like he was announcing something important. Come meet Jim from my job. Jim, this is my amazing mother-in-law I've told you so much about. Amazing mother-in-law. David's work conversations about me usually focused on my old-fashioned ideas or stubborn independence. But today he patted my shoulder with fake enthusiasm. His laugh too loud in the decorated hallway. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Richardsons from across the street chatted near the window while Mrs. Garcia sat carefully on the sofa, watching everything with sharp eyes. Mike and Lisa Chen helped their daughter Amy set up party games on the side table. Grandma! Tommy ran toward me, his real smile cutting through the fake atmosphere like sunshine. He wrapped his arms around my waist, and for a moment everything felt normal again. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I handed him the gift bag. This one first, then the big surprise. He unwrapped the robot building set with careful hands, his eyes getting wide at the picture on the box. But when he looked up to thank me, something flickered across his face, a shadow of sadness that disappeared when Sarah came over. Isn't Grandma generous, honey? Say thank you nicely. Thank you, Grandma. It's really cool. Tommy's voice carried real appreciation mixed with something else. guilt, worry. A 9-year-old shouldn't sound so burdened during his own birthday party. David guided me toward the kitchen where Jim Peterson sipped a soda and made small talk about his insurance job. The conversation seemed normal enough, but David kept interrupting with unnecessary compliments about my business sense and family wisdom. Each comment felt rehearsed, like lines from a play he'd memorized badly. "Eleanor knows everything about building successful relationships," David announced to Jim. "She's taught me so much about trust and family loyalty." Trust and family loyalty. Strange topics for casual party conversation, especially delivered with David's current manic intensity. Jim nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with David's excessive praise of his own mother-in-law. Sarah reappeared with a plate of snacks, positioning herself between me and the other guests. "Mom, you simply must try these little sandwiches. I made them especially thinking of your refined tastes." My refined tastes. Sarah had never paid attention to my food preferences beyond making sure there was enough at family gatherings. Now she hovered beside me, refilling my punch cup before it was empty, asking about my comfort every few minutes. From across the room, I watched Tommy opening cards from school friends. His movements seemed automatic, polite but distant. When Amy Chen asked about his new robot kit, he nodded and smiled appropriately, but his responses lacked the genuine excitement I'd expected. "He's growing up so fast," Mrs. Garcia observed, settling beside me on the couch. "Such a thoughtful child." He asked me last week if grandparents and parents ever fight about important things. My punch cup stopped halfway to my lips. "What did you tell him?" "That families work through problems with love and honesty." Mrs. Garcia studied Tommy with concerned eyes, though he seemed worried about something beyond normal kid problems. Across the room, David and Sarah shared a quick look, the kind of silent communication that suggested they were working together. They'd been doing that all afternoon, I realized. Brief eye contact, subtle nods, perfectly timed interruptions when conversations got close to certain topics. The afternoon dragged on with forced happiness and careful coordination. Every smile felt calculated, every laugh slightly too loud, every gesture of family love performed for an audience. Only Tommy's behavior toward me stayed real, though shadowed by whatever burden he carried. As the party moved toward its end and guests began collecting their things, David caught my attention with an overly casual gesture. "Mom, stick around after everyone goes, okay? Sarah and I have been looking forward to that family chat we mentioned." The fake cheerfulness began weighing on me like heavy air before a storm. I excused myself with a polite smile, mentioning the bathroom down the hall. Sarah jumped up immediately, offering directions I didn't need, her concern feeling rehearsed rather than genuine. Walking away from the party noise, I noticed Tommy watching me from beside the present table. Something in his expression, worry mixed with determination, made me pause. When I reached the hallway lined with family photos, small footsteps followed behind me. "Grandma!" His voice barely rose above a whisper. I turned to find him glancing back toward the living room, making sure we were alone. The birthday boy, who should have been glowing with happiness, looked instead like he carried the weight of the world on 9-year-old shoulders. "What is it, sweetheart?" I knelt to his eye level, recognizing the serious expression he'd inherited from his grandfather. "You look troubled." He bit his lower lip, a gesture that reminded me painfully of his grandfather during difficult conversations. "I need to tell you something important about Mom and Dad." My chest tightened. "What about them, honey?" "They're planning to take your money tonight." The words rushed out like he'd been practicing them. "After everyone goes home. I heard them talking last night when I was supposed to be asleep." The hallway seemed to spin slightly. I gripped the wall to steady myself, fighting to keep my expression calm for his sake. "What exactly did you hear?" Dad said. "She has too much money for an old lady living alone." Tommy's voice got even quieter. "He told Mom they were going to fix that problem tonight." Mom seemed excited, but Dad looked scared. "Mom said the papers from the bank would make everything legal." "Papers from the bank?" Thursday's visit that Dorothy Miller had mentioned suddenly made terrible sense. My grandmother instincts, quiet for years, roared back to life with crystal clarity. Did they say anything else? I asked gently, though my mind raced with implications I hoped a 9-year-old couldn't understand. Mom kept saying, "What if she finds out?" And Dad said it would be too late by then. Tears filled his eyes. "Grandma, I don't want them to take your money. You're the only one who really cares about me." I pulled him into a fierce hug, feeling his small body shaking against mine. My husband's grandson, carrying adult secrets that no child should bear. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing they'd planned this where innocent ears could hear. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into his hair. "You did the right thing telling me. But we need to keep this our secret for now, okay? Can you do that?" He nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to handle everything." I held him at arm's length, making sure he could see the certainty in my eyes. "But we need to go back to your party now and act normal. Can you be brave for me?" "I think so." He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Tommy, nothing your parents do could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand?" Relief flooded his face. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him all afternoon. "I love you too, Grandma." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the party sounds, but everything had changed in those few whispered minutes. The daughter I'd raised, the son-in-law I'd supported, the family I'd trusted with my heart, all of it now viewed through the lens of calculated betrayal. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught David's eyes across the room. He smiled and waved, the same false enthusiasm that had puzzled me earlier. Now I understood exactly what that performance was designed to accomplish. Returning to the party felt like walking onto a stage where everyone else had forgotten they were acting. I settled back into conversations with the natural ease that 30 years of running a business had taught me, while internally noting every glance between David and Sarah with devastating new clarity. Mrs. Garcia was discussing her vegetable garden when I noticed David checking his watch for the 4th time in 15 minutes. Sarah appeared beside him immediately, their brief eye contact now obviously coordinated rather than coincidental. They were managing me, I realized, making sure I stayed comfortable, engaged, and most importantly, present for whatever they had planned after the guests left. "Mom, how about some more punch?" Sarah's hand touched my arm with practiced concern. "You look a bit tired. Are you feeling all right?" "Tired? Yes, I probably was. Learning that your family plans to steal your life's work might do that to a person. But I managed a weary smile that wasn't entirely fake. "Just a slight headache, dear. But I'm fine." Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the kind of tiny change I'd learned to read in difficult customers over the years. Relief mixed with calculation. A tired, slightly unwell grandmother would be easier to manipulate than an alert one. For the next hour I played my part perfectly. Gracious grandmother, generous family matriarch, aging woman perhaps not quite as sharp as she once was. I accepted their attentions, praised their hospitality, and observed their increasingly obvious coordination with a detached interest of watching a chess opponent's strategy. David kept steering conversations away from money topics. Whenever guests mentioned retirement or savings plans, Sarah redirected to discussions about my house, my health, my future living arrangements. They were managing information flow, making sure nothing conflicted with whatever story they'd created for tonight's important family discussion. Around 6:30, as evening shadows grew longer and guests began gathering their things, I announced my intention to leave. "I think I should head home early. This headache isn't getting better." The effect was immediate. David and Sarah shared a look of genuine alarm. "Mom, wait." David moved to block my path to the door. "We really wanted to talk about those important family matters we mentioned. Remember, you promised to stay after everyone left." "Perhaps another time," I said, maintaining the weary grandmother act. "I really need to rest." "But Mom," Sarah stepped closer, her voice taking on urgent undertones. "We have something special planned for tonight. Something we've been preparing for weeks." Something they'd been preparing for weeks. The bank visit Dorothy Miller had witnessed. Legal documents, plans that required my presence and cooperation. I could see the desperation creeping into their performance as their carefully planned timeline threatened to fall apart. "I'm sure it can wait until tomorrow," I replied gently. "Family isn't going anywhere." David's face turned red. "Actually, Mom, there are some time-sensitive issues we need to discuss. Financial matters that can't wait." Financial matters that can't wait. How interesting that David would phrase it exactly that way. I filed the comment away with all the other evidence I'd gathered throughout this strange afternoon. "Tomorrow, dear. I promise." I turned toward Tommy, who had been watching our exchange with worried eyes. Kneeling to his level, I pulled him into what might be our last innocent embrace before everything changed. "Thank you for the most wonderful birthday party, sweetheart. Thank you for my presents, Grandma." His small arms tightened around my neck. "I love you so much. I love you too, more than you'll ever know," I whispered against his ear, quiet enough that only he could hear. "Everything will be okay." Standing, I felt David's hand on my shoulder, heavier than necessary, almost restraining. "Mom, please just give us an hour. 1 hour to discuss these important family decisions." I looked into my son-in-law's eyes and saw not the man who'd married my daughter, but a desperate person whose greed had overwhelmed whatever love remained. The realization cut deeper than I'd expected, but my voice stayed steady. "Another time, David. I need to go home now." Walking to my car while they watched from the doorway, Sarah whispering urgently in David's ear, both of them radiating frustrated tension, I felt the weight of performance finally lifting from my shoulders. Alone in my Honda, I sat for a moment in their driveway, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. My family had planned to ROB me tonight with legal documents and careful preparation. Starting the engine, I pulled away from the house where I'd celebrated what might be my last normal family gathering. Inside my house, the silence felt different than it had that morning. No longer peaceful, pregnant with purpose. I walked directly to my home office, the room where I'd built my flower shop from a single cart and stubborn determination. 30 years of important documents lived in the wall safe behind my husband's portrait. I spun the combination lock with muscle memory from decades of business dealings. December 15, 1960, my husband's birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me that his memory would help me protect what we'd built together. The documents told a story I'd been too trusting to read properly. Bank statements revealing the pattern of financial requests that had grown from hundreds to thousands over 2 years. Investment accounts worth far more than David or Sarah realized. Property papers for rental houses they didn't know existed. And most importantly, records of every payment I'd made to support their lifestyle. 193 individual transactions. I documented everything with the careful precision that had made my business successful. House repairs, car payments, medical bills, dance classes for Tommy. Each payment justified by some family emergency or opportunity that seemed reasonable at the time. Sitting at my desk with my husband's photo watching from the bookshelf, I finally saw the manipulation clearly. The growing requests had been conditioning, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts. Sarah's suggestions about retirement homes weren't concern for my welfare. They were scouting for tonight's planned theft. "Every house repair, every car payment," I said aloud to my husband's photograph. "They've been planning this for months." My phone sat silent on the desk. David and Sarah would be scrambling right now, trying to figure out how to proceed without me present for their important family discussion. The thought gave me a grim satisfaction. Opening my business contact book, I found Patricia Wong's personal number. 15 years of friendship and professional respect with the lawyer who'd handled my business contracts. Patricia would remember the careful, detail-oriented shop owner who'd never missed an appointment or broken an agreement. More importantly, she'd understand exactly what legal documents obtained under false pretenses actually meant. The clock showed 10:30 p.m. too late for business calls, but I made a note for tomorrow morning. First priority: understanding exactly what papers David and Sarah had obtained and how to make them useless. Next, I reviewed my will and trust documents. Standard arrangements that left everything to Sarah with provisions for Tommy's education and future, written when I still believed my daughter had integrity and love for her family rather than simply greed for my money. Those documents would need immediate changes. Catherine Mills had handled most of my legal paperwork over the years. Independent, discreet, and unconnected to any bank where David and Sarah might have friends. Another call for tomorrow morning. Spreading the investment statements across my desk like battle plans, I calculated my actual net worth for the first time in years. 1.8 million in savings accounts, plus 2 rental properties, plus this house with no mortgage. Far more than David and Sarah suspected, and certainly more than they could steal in one evening's legal tricks. But this wasn't about money. This was about justice for a 9-year-old boy whose parents were willing to burden him with adult secrets. This was about punishment for adults who'd exploit an elderly woman's love for her family. This was about making sure that betrayal came with consequences. My husband's voice echoed from our last conversation. Watch David carefully. Weak people make dangerous choices when someone pushy is telling them what to do. Now I understood. Sarah had been pushing for 2 years, and David had chosen greed over family loyalty at every turn. My phone rang suddenly, startling me from planning. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring. Sunday morning brought clarity that a restless night had failed to provide. After finally falling asleep near dawn, I woke with my business instincts fully engaged and a specific plan forming. Over coffee in my home office, I opened my business contact file to Patricia Wong's personal number. 9 o'clock seemed appropriate for calling an old friend about legal matters. Patricia and I had maintained our friendship through 15 years of contracts, property deals, and the gradual success of my flower shop. She'd trust a call from me, especially about financial management. "Patricia, sorry to bother you on Sunday morning," I began when she answered. "I've been reviewing my legal documents and wanted to get your thoughts on some protection ideas." "Eleanor, always good to hear from you." Her voice carried genuine warmth. "What's on your mind?" "I'm considering updating my arrangements, maybe adding some safeguards for easier management." "What are current legal policies on financial protection programs?" "Well, there are several options depending on your needs. Are you thinking about automated services or more comprehensive protection assistance?" Perfect opening. "Actually, I've been wondering about power of attorney arrangements, guardianship options. Had any clients dealing with those recently?" Patricia paused, and I could almost hear her considering professional boundaries. "Funny you should ask. Just last week, I had a young couple inquiring about guardianship procedures for an elderly family member." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. "Oh, complex process, I imagine." Actually, they seemed quite prepared. Had done considerable research on conservatorship requirements, documentation timelines. Very thorough people. Very thorough. My daughter and son-in-law had researched exactly how to steal my independence with legal precision. "That's thoughtful of them to help their family," I said carefully. They were asking specific questions about mental competency evaluations, financial management documentation, timelines for court approval. Patricia's professional knowledge was exactly what I needed. They understood the terminology better than most lawyers I've worked with. Mental competency evaluations. Court approval timelines. They'd planned to have me declared incompetent and seize control of everything I'd spent 30 years building. The scope of their betrayal kept expanding beyond what I'd imagined possible. Did they seem confident about their situation? I asked carefully. Absolutely. They mentioned having documentation ready, medical opinions prepared. Said they expected the process to move quickly once started. Patricia chuckled. Most families aren't nearly so organized when dealing with elderly care transitions. Elderly care transitions. The nice way of saying they'd researched how to put me in a home while stealing my wealth, and they'd done it with systematic professional thoroughness. Sounds like they really cared about their family members' welfare, I managed. That's what struck me most. how much preparation they'd put into ensuring everything would be legally proper and swift. They asked about expedited processes, emergency guardianship procedures. Emergency guardianship for situations where immediate action was necessary to protect someone's assets from their own incompetence. Hearing my own situation described in clinical legal terms felt surreal. Well, I appreciate the information, Patricia. Gives me a better sense of available options. Anytime, Eleanor. Though honestly, you seem sharper than women half your age. Can't imagine you needing that kind of assistance for decades yet. If only she knew how close I'd come to needing it yesterday. Let's hope you're right. Thanks for taking my call on Sunday. Always a pleasure. Let me know if you want to schedule a formal consultation about your legal protections. After hanging up, I sat staring at my notes from the conversation. Mental competency evaluations, documentation ready, medical opinions prepared, emergency procedures. David and Sarah hadn't just planned to rob me. They'd engineered a complete legal framework to justify stealing my life. The phone rang suddenly, startling me from my thoughts. Sarah's name appeared on the screen again. This time I answered, deliberately making my voice sound tired and confused, as if reaching for the phone required great effort. Hello. Mom, thank goodness. I was worried sick about you leaving early yesterday. Sarah's voice carried what sounded like genuine concern, though I now recognized the calculation beneath it. Are you feeling all right? Oh, Sarah. I let my voice trail off slightly, as if gathering thoughts had become difficult. I've been having these terrible headaches. Hard to focus on anything. That doesn't sound good. Maybe we should have you checked by a doctor. David and I could drive you to the clinic this afternoon. Perfect. They were speeding up their timeline exactly as I'd hoped after disrupting their original plan. That's very kind of you both. I've been feeling so confused lately. Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of everything. We'll be over in about an hour. Okay. After hanging up, I spent 30 minutes preparing for the performance of my lifetime. I messed up my hair slightly, put on an old sweater that made me look smaller, and practiced the slower, more hesitant movements of genuine elderly confusion. When their car pulled into my driveway, I was ready. Mom, we brought some papers that might help with your situation, Sarah announced as they settled into my living room. She'd brought a leather folder that looked expensive and professional, the kind lawyers used for important documents. Papers. I blinked at her with what I hoped appeared to be genuine bewilderment. What kind of papers? David leaned forward, his expression earnest. Mom, we've been researching ways to help you manage things better. Your finances, medical decisions, that sort of thing. Manage. I rubbed my temples as if the conversation was causing physical pain. I'm not sure I understand. Everything seems so complicated these days. Sarah opened the folder with practiced efficiency. These documents would give us power of attorney to help with your banking, bills, doctor appointments. Think of it as having a backup system. The forms looked professionally prepared with yellow highlighted sections marked for my signature. Someone had invested serious money in legal consultation for this theft. I stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. It's so overwhelming, I murmured. I used to understand these things better. That's exactly why we need to do this now, Sarah pressed gently. Before things get more confusing for you. David shifted uncomfortably. Mom, are you sure you're okay? You seem really different today. I looked at him with what I hoped was confused gratitude. Different? I don't feel different. Just tired all the time. These headaches make it hard to think clearly. Sarah and David exchanged a glance. The same coordinated communication I'd noticed at the party, but now I understood its purpose. They were evaluating whether I was impaired enough to sign documents without fully understanding what they meant. Mom, these papers would just make it easier for us to help you, Sarah continued. You wouldn't have to worry about managing everything alone. I suppose that would be nice, I said slowly, picking up one of the documents with shaking hands. But this is such a big decision. My head is pounding trying to think it through. Of course it's a big decision, David said quickly. Take your time. Sarah's patience looked more strained though. Don't you think it would be easier with family help? You trust us, don't you? Of course I trust you. You're my family. I set the papers down carefully. But could I maybe sleep on it? Decide tomorrow when I'm thinking clearer. These headaches make everything so fuzzy. David and Sarah looked at each other again, and I could see Sarah's frustration barely contained beneath her caring facade. Sure, Mum. We'll come by tomorrow morning and you can sign them then. After they left, I allowed myself to slump in my chair, dropping the performance for the first time in hours. The documents they'd left behind told the complete story, power of attorney forms that would give them control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Everything Patricia had warned me about, laid out in legal language designed to steal my life. 3 hours later, I sat in my home office, reviewing my notes from David and Sarah's visit like a general planning a battle. Their power of attorney documents lay spread across my desk, professional forms that would have given them complete control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Every signature line highlighted in yellow, every witness requirement carefully marked. They'd done their homework, but they'd forgotten I'd spent 30 years doing mine. Margaret Stone answered on the second ring. Eleanor, good evening. What can I do for you? Margaret, I need notary services tomorrow morning for some family financial documents. Could you come to my house around 10 o'clock? Of course. What type of documents are we dealing with? I chose my words carefully. Power of attorney forms. It might be a somewhat sensitive family matter, so I'd appreciate your professional discretion. You know you can count on that. I'll bring my seal and journal. Perfect. Margaret had notarized dozens of contracts for my flower shop over the years. She'd recognize irregular pressure tactics or coercion immediately. It was part of her professional training. Next call, Patricia Wong. Patricia, could you stop by tomorrow morning around 10 o'clock? I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I'd like to review my legal protections in detail. Certainly, Eleanor. After what we discussed about financial management assistance, I think a thorough review would be wise. Excellent. It might be educational. Patricia chuckled. I'll bring the necessary paperwork. See you at 10. Educational indeed. Patricia would witness whatever David and Sarah planned to do, and as a lawyer, she'd understand exactly what she was seeing. More importantly, her presence would add legal weight to any documentation of their behavior. Final call, Sarah. I let my voice carry the tremulous uncertainty I'd performed that afternoon. Sarah, I've been thinking about those papers you brought. You were right. I do need help managing things. Mom, that's wonderful. David will be so relieved. I've arranged for a notary to make everything proper and legal. 10 o'clock sharp. Perfect. And Mom, thank you for trusting us with this. Trust. The word sat bitter in my mouth, but I managed to sound grateful. You're my family. Of course I trust you. After hanging up, I walked to the window overlooking my backyard. My husband's vegetable garden needed attention. Another task I'd been managing alone since his death. Tomorrow would determine whether I'd continue managing it as a free woman or watch it die from some nursing home while David and Sarah divided our life's work. I pulled out a notebook and wrote down what I expected tomorrow. 9:45 a.m. Margaret arrives, sets up notary materials. 10 a.m. Patricia arrives with legal documents. 5 a.m. David and Sarah arrive expecting easy document signing. 10:10 a.m. Professional witnesses observe their manipulation tactics. 10:15 a.m. Truth emerges. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. They'd researched how to steal my independence through legal procedures, but they'd forgotten that legal procedures require proper witnesses and documentation. Tomorrow, those same requirements would expose their betrayal. 20 miles across town, Sarah was probably explaining to David how cooperative I'd sounded, how the notary would make everything official, how close they were to controlling millions of dollars. They'd celebrate tonight, confident that a confused old woman had finally accepted their help. They had no idea they were walking into a trap set by the same business mind that had built what they were trying to steal. I looked at Tommy's drawing on my refrigerator, our stick-figure family standing beside a crooked house. Tomorrow would determine whether that little boy grew up with a grandmother who protected him, or parents who taught him that family loyalty could be bought and sold. My husband's voice echoed from 2 years ago. "Promise me you'll always take care of Tommy." I intended to keep that promise. Monday morning arrived cloudy and cool. I slept little that night, but when Margaret arrived at 9:45 with her notary seal and journal, I felt completely prepared. "Good morning, Eleanor. Beautiful home office," she said, arranging her materials on the side table. "This should be straightforward." Patricia knocked precisely at 10, carrying her lawyer's briefcase. "Morning, Eleanor. Ready for that legal review?" "More ready than you know," I replied, positioning myself behind my desk as footsteps approached the front door. David and Sarah entered with confident smiles and their leather document case. They paused when they saw Margaret and Patricia, but Sarah recovered quickly. "How thoughtful of you to arrange professional assistance," she said smoothly. "This will make everything so much more official." "Indeed it will," I replied, my voice carrying none of yesterday's confused frailty. "Please everyone take a seat." David settled into the chair across from my desk, still smiling. "Mom, you sound much better today. More like your old self." "Exactly like my old self, sharp, observant, capable." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes directly. "Which is why I need to tell you something before we sign any documents." Sarah's pen stopped moving across her checklist. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong with me, Sarah, but I'm completely aware of your plan." The silence stretched like a tight rope. David's smile disappeared. "Mom, what plan?" "We're here to help you. I know about your visit to Patricia's bank last Thursday. I know about the guardianship procedures you researched. I know about the mental competency evaluations you plan to arrange." David's face turned white. Sarah's carefully controlled expression cracked for just a moment before she attempted damage control. "Mom, you're confused. We visited the bank about our own financial planning." "Patricia," I interrupted, turning to my friend, "would you mind sharing what they discussed during their Thursday afternoon appointment?" Patricia cleared her throat professionally. "They asked detailed questions about conservatorship procedures, documentation requirements for declaring someone mentally incompetent, and expedited court processes for emergency financial management." Margaret looked up from her notary journal, suddenly alert. "Mrs. Price, are you saying these power of attorney documents were prepared under false pretenses?" "I'm saying they planned to have me declared incompetent so they could steal everything I've worked 30 years to build." David found his voice, though it came out choked. "Mom, we were worried about you. Yesterday you seemed so confused. Yesterday I was acting. Today you're seeing who I really am." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the documentation I'd prepared. 193 transactions over 2 years. $85,000 in support payments. Every house repair, every car payment, every dance class tuition, all documented. Sarah leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. "Those were legitimate family expenses." "Conditioning payments," I corrected, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts until I'd agreed to sign away my independence. I looked directly at her. "You researched exactly how to have me institutionalized while you divided my assets." Margaret set down her pen. "This is highly irregular. I need to understand the full situation before notarizing anything." "The full situation," I continued, "is that my daughter and son-in-law spent weeks researching legal procedures to steal my money, consulted with lawyers about guardianship processes, and planned to have me declared mentally incompetent based on fake evidence of confusion." David's hands shook as he gripped the chair arms. We just thought you might need help managing things. Help managing a net worth of $1.8 million plus 2 rental properties." My voice hardened. "Help that required consulting attorneys about emergency conservatorship procedures." Sarah stood abruptly. You're twisting everything. We love you. Love doesn't involve conspiracy, Sarah. Love doesn't involve researching how to steal someone's independence while they're still healthy and competent. Patricia spoke quietly. Eleanor, the questions they asked were very specific. They knew legal terminology that most families never encounter unless they're planning something significant. Margaret nodded grimly. In my experience, legitimate family financial planning doesn't require research into mental competency evaluations. The room fell silent except for David's heavy breathing. He looked at me with something approaching recognition, perhaps seeing for the first time the businesswoman who'd built the wealth they tried to steal. What happens now? He whispered. I stood, feeling every year of my age, but also every ounce of my accumulated wisdom and experience. Now we discuss consequences. Consequences, I repeated, opening my desk drawer to retrieve the legal documents I'd prepared over the weekend. I'm changing my will immediately. My estate will go into an educational trust for Tommy, accessible when he turns 21. David leaned forward desperately. Mom, please. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. The trust will provide for his college education, graduate school if he chooses, and startup funds for whatever career path he selects. I spread the new will documents across my desk. Margaret, I need these witnessed and notarized. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Mom, you can't do this to your own family. I'm protecting my family, I replied firmly. From parents who were willing to steal their son's grandmother's independence to fund their lifestyle. Margaret examined the documents professionally. Mrs. Price, these terms are quite specific. There are conditions attached. If David and Sarah formally give up all claims to my estate and show genuine change over the next year, I'll reconsider. But they must prove they've become the parents Tommy deserves. Patricia nodded approvingly as she witnessed my signature. The educational trust structure is excellent. He'll have every opportunity you want to provide directly. David buried his face in his hands. What does genuine change mean? How do we prove that? By getting jobs that actually support your family instead of depending on me. By putting Tommy's happiness over your own financial desires. By showing me that my grandson matters more to you than my bank account. Sarah stood abruptly, her composure finally breaking completely. How are we supposed to live without your support? The same way millions of other families do, through honest work and responsible spending. The house repair assistance ends today. The car payments stop immediately. You're both adults with college degrees. Figure it out. Margaret finished notarizing the documents with practiced efficiency. Everything is legally binding now, Mrs. Price. You should keep these in a secure location. My attorney will have copies by this afternoon, I assured her. After Margaret and Patricia left with handshakes and promises of discretion, the three of us sat in uncomfortable silence. David looked broken. Sarah appeared to be calculating survival strategies. Is there anything else you want to say? Yes. David met my eyes for the first time since the revelation began. I'm sorry, Mom. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm genuinely sorry. Sarah said nothing, which told me everything about her priorities. Words are cheap, David. Actions over the next year will determine whether this family has a future together. 3 hours later, Tommy knocked on my door. His school backpack still over his shoulder. Grandma, Mommy said you wanted to see me. I knelt to his eye level, just as I had in the hallway 3 days ago. Come sit with me, sweetheart. We need to talk about some grown-up things. He settled beside me on the couch, his 9-year-old wisdom already sensing something serious. Is this about what I told you? Partly. Your mommy and daddy made some bad choices about money, and there have to be consequences. But none of this changes how much I love you. Are they in trouble? They have to learn to take better care of themselves and you. But Tommy, I want you to know that your future is completely safe. I've made special arrangements to make sure you can go to any college you want, study anything that interests you. His eyes brightened slightly. Even space school. That's really expensive. Especially space school. And if you change your mind and want to be a doctor or a teacher or start your own business, there will be money for that too. What about mommy and daddy? They're going to work very hard to become better parents. And if they succeed, our family might be able to heal from this hurt. But even if they don't, you and I will always have each other. He hugged me tightly, and I felt my husband's presence in that embrace. 3 generations of love continuing despite betrayal and broken trust. Can we look at college websites? Umi asked. I want to see what space schools look like. Absolutely, I smiled, reaching for my computer. We have all the time in the world to plan your future. Outside, spring was turning to summer, and my husband's vegetable garden was finally beginning to grow. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Granny's Voice, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments. Thank you for watching.